Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is MK Russell and today we're doing a mid-year reading check-in video. So I'm going to be going through every single book I read this year, the rating, the genre. This isn't going to have any spoilers about what the book is about, just the genre, what I liked about it, and what I'm looking forward to reading for the rest of the year. So let's get into it. So the first book I read this year was a historical fiction by Mark T. Sullivan called Beneath a Scarlet Sky. And this was my first book of the year. I read it in January while I was in Antarctica, and I give it 5 stars. I absolutely love this book, and it is by far my favorite historical fiction. It has a romance subplot, and it's just a great book. I would highly recommend reading to anyone. The second book I read in 2024 was Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. This is a young adult romance. It's a chess romance, so I was really big in my chess phase earlier this year, so reading this book was great. I absolutely loved it. I gave it 4 stars, and it was a nice, solid young adult read. The third book I read was The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I gave this one 5 stars. This is by far one of my favorite Riley Sager books. I hadn't read anything like it, and I was really surprised by the plot twist at the end. If you know anything about Riley Sager, he writes thrillers, and this one did not disappoint. The fourth book I read in 2024 was 11/22/63 by Stephen King, and it's like a historical fiction, sci-fi, some aspects of thriller as well. And it was so good. I give it 5 stars. It did take me a long time to read because it's 800 pages, and sometimes Stephen King's writing can feel a bit long-winded, but he is so talented of an author that it was just such a great read, and I absolutely adored it. The next 2 books I read were by the same author. I read The Fastest Way to Fall and Do You Take This Man by Denise Williams. She is an author from Ames who works at the university, and I gave both these books 4 stars. They're both romance books, and they were just great reads. I actually really like them, so yeah. Then I read The Defining Decade by Meg Jay, and it's a nonfiction book that I've heard a lot of people say really good things about, and just makes you think about why your 20s matter and how to make the most of your 20s. And it's kind of a self-help book, but I really liked it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Hind's Feet on High Places by Hannah Hurnard. This is a kind of like an allegory, I think is the right word. And it's like a Christian book. I know a lot of people really love this and gave it 5 stars. I thought there were just a few parts that were kind of confusing that didn't necessarily make the most sense to me. But I did give it 4 out of 5 stars, and it was just overall a great read. Then I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and I gave it 5 stars because I absolutely love this book. I fell in love with Ashley Poston's writing, and just the sci-fi element of this little romance book was so great, and I loved every second of it, so big fan. The next book I read was another 5-star for me, and it was Funny Feelings by Tara DeWitt, and as someone who thinks they're funny, reading about people who are actually funny, I just died. It was such a great read, and I absolutely loved every second of it. And there is a single dad in this book, I believe, according to my review. So, it was really good, and I absolutely loved it. The next book I read was The Fury by Alex Michaelides. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I was disappointed. I loved The Silent Patient. Gave it 5 stars. Absolutely freaking ate that book up. So this book was an upset for me because it didn't feel thrilling at all, and I was just kind of bored the whole time I was reading it. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It's still a good book, but I wasn't dying over it. Then the next book I read was White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, and it's a book about racism. It's been recommended in a lot of my education classes for white educators to read and get a sense about race relations in America. And it was good. I felt like everything that I read is something I've heard before that I've talked about in my classes, so it wasn't reinventing the wheel or anything or really teaching me anything new. So I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but it's still a great read. It's a great introductory read if you've never read anything about racism or just race in general in America. So highly recommend. The next book I read was a really short one, and it was so great. It was Encyclopedia Brown, Boy Detective. A podcast I listened to, they were talking about Encyclopedia Brown, and then they read one of the stories, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I need to read this whole book. And I read it, and it was so fun for me just to like guess along with like what was going on. This is like a little fiction book, and like there's like clues in it, and you try and guess. It was literally so fun. I highly recommend if you have kids or if you're like wanting to like tap back into that inner child. I would definitely recommend reading Encyclopedia Brown. 5 stars for 5 stars for Encyclopedia Brown. The next book I read was also a 5-star read. It was one of my most anticipated reads of the year so far, and it was Funny Story by Emily Henry. I gave it 5 stars. I'm obsessed. I am literally obsessed with this book. I think if I reread it, it might be my favorite Emily Henry book. Because Book Lovers Right Now is my favorite Emily Henry book, and I read that twice, and I annotated it the second time I read it, and I just literally loved every second of that book. But Funny Story has this more literary fiction vibe, as opposed to all the other Emily Henry books I've read. Happy Place kind of had it too, but this one feels more like women's fiction, less like a romance book, and I really loved every single second of that, so highly recommend Funny Story by Emily Henry. The next book I read is Home is Where the Bodies Are by Jennifer Rose. I was really anticipating this book. I really loved The Perfect Marriage by her, and it was literally so good. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't like, it didn't give me that 5-star feeling, but the ending really did surprise me, and the little twist was really great. Then, also in the month of April, I read the entire Bible, the NIV Red Letter version, from start to finish in 30 days. So I read that, 5 stars, great read. Highly recommend reading through it at least once in your life. It's a great read. And I wasn't reading for the sake of understanding necessarily every single thing or like really diving deep. I was reading so I could get the entire like big picture story. So I read that. Then I read the Improbable, oh no, shoot. Then I read The Exception to the Rule by Christina Lauren, which is part of like the Amazon Originals Improbable Meet Cute series, and it's just like a novella that like tells a little meet cute, and it was so adorable. I loved every second of it. It was told through emails. It happened like once a year type vibes. Literally loved every second of it. 5 stars for me. I also like love anything that Christina Lauren writes, so highly obsessed. The next book I read was Bridesmaid for Hire by Megan Quinn, and this is the first 2-star book of 2024 for me. I don't know what it was about it. The concept could have been so good, and for me it just fell so flat. This is another romance book, and it just really missed the mark. And it broke my heart because I thought it was such a great idea for a book, but it literally just flopped so hard. The next book I read was another 5-star read, and it's The Bodyguard by Katherine Center. And I freaking love Katherine Center. I love this book. Oh God, it was so good. It literally was just so good, so wholesome, so clean, just a closed-door romance it made my heart flutter, and it was just so perfect. I love this book. 5 stars, highly recommend. And fun fact, Katherine Center liked my review on Goodreads. Love. Okay. Then the next book I read after that was Real Murders, and it's the first book in the Aurora Teagarden mystery series by Charlene Harris, and I gave it 2 stars because I hated it, and it was terrible, and I don't give books 1 stars unless it's like really bad, and this one wasn't really bad. It like wasn't a crime against humanity bad. It's just like I hated every second of it, so it was a terrible read. Then I read Alternate Endings by Ali Rosen. It was really good. I liked it fine. I read it quickly. It was 3 out of 5 stars for me. Nothing really special, but it was good. Then I read How to Plot a Payback by Melissa Ferguson. This is another closed-door romance author. I think she writes only closed-door romance, but I really like this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was a good time. Then I read The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. I give it 3 stars. This could have been a 5-star read for me. This could have been a 5-star read, and it just flopped so hard. Literally the last 20% was so bad. It was just like objectively bad, and so it made me give it a 3 star. Then I read my favorite book of the year. On May 30th, May 29th to May 30th, I read The Reading List by Sarah Nisha Adams. And guys, I've not heard anyone talk about this book literally at all, but I love this book and I will be doing a whole sit down video about this book specifically, probably later in the year, but I freaking love this book. It was so good. I don't know what else there is to say about it. Something about this book and like people falling in love with reading in this way literally like melted my heart, also like tore it apart, ripped it to freaking shreds. I felt every emotion possible when I read this book and it was so good. So, highly recommend and stay tuned for the next video because it will probably, or a next video, I don't know. One of these next upcoming videos is going to be a like book review specifically about The Reading List. Then I read The Summer of Broken Rules by K.L. Walther. I was hoping for this book to be a 5-star read. I won't lie. I had seen a lot of positive reviews. My Instagram followers chose this one for me to read, and it was fine. It was like 4-star. It was good. I just wish it was like more. I just would have a little sparkle more. And that one's a YA romance too. Then I read The Women by Kristen Hanna, and this book was so hyped up for me. Like, I had everyone telling me that this is going to be the book that makes you sob, and then I proceeded to not cry, and it was fine. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. I think I'm going to really like Kristen Hanna as an author. I have a couple more books on my TBR from her, so I'm really excited to read those, but yeah. Then I read Meet Me in the Margins by Melissa Ferguson. Girl, let me tell you, Melissa Ferguson writing about author. Girl, this is over. I knew I would like this book. I knew I would like this book. And guess what? I loved it. 5 freaking stars. Absolutely freaking loved it. Loved this book. Okay. Then we get into Disappointment City, also known as Survive the Night by Riley Sager. I can't tell if I hate the way Riley Sager writes a woman or if I love it or if he's writing stupid women on purpose. Like, I just don't know. And Survive the Night is literally the book that formed that opinion for me. So I gave it 3 stars. It frustrated me beyond belief, but it was fine. It was great. Then I read another Riley Sager book. I read The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and it kind of redeemed Riley Sager for me. I was like, oh, maybe he can write a woman. And like the first plot twist, I didn't see coming. And then there was a second one, and then I felt like there was a third one. So I thoroughly actually enjoyed this one. 4 out of 5 stars. Next book I read was Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. And let me tell you, anything Ali Hazelwood writes, I will read. I tried reading Bride. I hated it. I got 10% in. I DNF'd it. I was like, okay, this is not for me. But also, I don't think like werewolf vampire things are for me. That's not my reading that I like. So then, when Not in Love came out, I was like, okay, this is another STEM woman girly romance book. And then it was like so much more raunchy than any of the other books she read. So I gave it 3 stars, and I was slightly disappointed. But also, I knew that going into it that it was going to be slightly more spice, so I should have just known better that I wouldn't love it, but I was slightly sad. Then I read Riley Sager's new release, Middle of the Night, and I gave it 3 stars. I was just kind of let down because I was like, and maybe this is my fault, but I hype up Riley Sager so much in my head that I think this book is going to change my life. It's going to be so good, and then I hated the ending. I just hated the way it ended, so that was that. Then I read Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan, which you saw in the last video I posted. And it was so close to being a 5-star. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was so close to being a 5-star, but it didn't have that little sparkle that made my heart flutter. It was really good though. And then I read another 5-star read. I read The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center, her new release, and it was so freaking good. I found this book at a bookstore in Boulder, and it had sprayed edges, and like the inside cover had like little leaves on it. And it's the most beautiful book I own. It is hands down the most beautiful book I own. I love it. It was 5 stars. Catherine Center did it again. I know there's a lot of like controversy with this book, and by controversy I mean there's just like a couple negative reviews, but I freaking loved it. It was so cute, and I just was obsessed with it. I was obsessed with it. And I think anything Catherine Center writes, I'm gonna be obsessed with. That's just the way the cookie's crumbling. The last 2 books I have are The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Shopsky. I don't know. I gave it 3 stars. I remember reading this book in high school. This was like the only book I ever actually read in high school, and I don't remember the plot, but I remember I read it. And I thought it was fine, but I didn't like love it, so I gave it 3 stars. And then the last book is the book I'm currently reading. I'm like 75% in to A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. And dude, this is shaping up to be a 4-star read, possibly 5. I don't think it's gonna be 5, but it's a 4-star read for me, and I really love it. And yeah, those are so far the books I've read in 2024. So, of the 42 books I have read so far in 2022, there have been 14 5-star reads. So far, my favorite book of the year is definitely The Reading List by Sarah Nisha Adams. My least favorite book is got to be tied for Bridesmaid for Hire and the Real Murders Aurora Teagarden book. I like my highs and lows of the year for reading so far. Now, we're going to jump into my second half of the year TBR. My second half of the year TBR has 15 books on it, so I'm currently reading Before the Coffee Gets Cold. It's taking me a long time to get through it because I don't know why, I just don't love it. But that is one book I want to finish this year. Then I have A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman, Thank You for Listening by Julia Whelan, Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, The Ministry of Time by Kayleen Bradley, The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger, Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney, A Little Life by Henya Yanagihara, Super Communicators by Charles Duhigg. I have Sunrise and the Reaping. It doesn't come out until 2025, but Sunrise and the Reaping is on here. Hearts Overboard by Becky Dean, The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna, Tom Lake by Ann Patchett, The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and then The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. Those are like my books that I have on my TBR, on my radar, that I want to read. If you have any books that like you think I should read, let me know because I'm always looking for recommendations. But that being said, that's everything I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed what I've read so far in 2024 and what I plan to read in 2024. My original reading goal this year was 24 books, and I've since upped it to 52 because I accomplished 24 books in May, and I was like, well, maybe let's make a different goal. So I have 52 books on my goal for the year. I hope I can overpass that because I'm already at 42, so I only have 10 books left to read. But that being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.